Hello, Hillcrest. Shout out to 4th grade who's doing some virtual learning this week. It's time for this week's story time. And this is a story that we have read in the library for several years now. And I hope a lot of you will remember it. And if it's your first time, I hope you enjoy it. This is a book by Lemony Snicket. And it's Christmas season, but it's also Hanukkah season for our Jewish friends. Hanukkah starts tomorrow. And this is a story that is a Christmas story about Hanukkah, a Hanukkah tradition. It's called The Latke Who Couldn't Stop Screaming. A Christmas story. And it is a lovely story. Now, this story begins, well, the story ends in someone's mouth, but it begins in a tiny village, more or less covered in snow. The snow has fallen during the long night, during which children had their faces pressed to the windows, looking for a glimpse of a man who they suspected of bringing them wonderful gifts. But instead, they heard a terrible noise from a certain cottage in a neighboring Adirondissement, which is a word that means a place where something is being born. Now, this cottage was already regarded with some suspicion, as it was the only place not decorated with flashing colored lights at this time of year. The thing that was being born was a latke, a word which here means potato pancake. Latkes are traditional parts of the Hanukkah celebration. It's a holiday commemorating a miraculous Jewish military victory. Now, nearly everything in this world is born screaming, and the latke is no exception. Even though the latke isn't conceived and born in the way that you and I were conceived and born, but instead it was fashioned from grated potato, chopped onion, beaten egg, and a dash or two of salt. Once those ingredients are properly mixed, the latke is slapped into a pan full of olive oil, heated to a very high temperature, and this is when it began to scream. This is how you make a latke. The latke was suffering so much that it leapt from the burning oil, out of the hot pan, out of the window of the cottage, and began to run screaming down the boulevard. Now, this may seem like unusual behavior for a potato pancake, but this is a Christmas story in which things tend to happen that would never occur in real life. Now, the latke ran past a row of flashing colored lights, which hung from the rain gutters of a less suspicious cottage. "What's all the ruckus?" the lights asked in uniform. "We're the ones that are supposed to be dominating the neighborhood with our cheerful glue." "I was just thrown in a pot of burning oil. Boiling oil," the latke cried. "Can you believe it?" "Yes," said the flashing colored lights, "but we can't imagine why." "Because I'm a latke," said the latke. "The olive oil reminds us of the oil that's used to rededicate the temple following the defeat of Antiochus at the hands of the Maccabees. The oil was only supposed to last for 1 night, but instead it burned for 8. Plus, frying makes my skin crispy and brown." "Oh, well, you're basically hash browns," said the flashing colored lights. "Maybe we could serve you alongside a Christmas ham." "I'm not hash browns," cried the latke. "I'm something completely different." The latke rounded the corner and found itself face to face with a candy cane, which wrinkled its red and white nose at the latke in distaste. "I'm trying to sprinkle the night with my peppermint scent," the candy cane said. "Your mouth-watering smell, not to mention all the yelping, is spoiling my effect." My mouth-watering smell is part of the cozy feeling of Hanukkah, the Latke replied. It reminds us that things are better now than they were in 175 BCE when my people were not allowed to practice their religion. In order to study the Torah, they had to hide in caves. And when they heard the Greek soldiers coming, they pretended to be gambling with small spinning tops called dreidels. Oh, sort of like Mary and Joseph hiding out in the manger, said the candy cane. Someone should write a Christmas carol about you. I am not part of the Christmas tradition, said the Latke. It's a totally different thing. The screams of the Latke grew quieter and quieter as the pancake ran out of the village and into the surrounding forest. The Latke was still, its utter fury was unabated, which is a phrase that means the Latke was still very annoyed at the objects to whom it had spoken. But it was quite tired, and so it decided to rest for a few minutes beneath the branches of a little pine tree. The pine tree was napping, but it woke up at the sound of an object plopping down at its feet. Are you a present? The pine tree asked, because presents are pretty much the only thing allowed to sit beneath me at this time of year. The Latke sighed. Presents aren't really a big part of Hanukkah, it said in a voice that was hoarse from screaming. There's nothing wrong with giving gifts to loved ones, of course, but it's more important to light the candles for 8 consecutive nights to commemorate the miracle in the temple and the miracle of victory when you are thoroughly outnumbered, so you shouldn't give up hope. Plus Santa Claus, said the Christmas tree. The Latke was too exhausted to scream. Santa Claus has nothing to do with it, the Latke said. Christmas and Hanukkah are 2 totally different things. Different things can sometimes blend together, said the pine tree. Let me tell you a funny story about pagan rituals. But before the pine tree could begin its story, a family came trooping through the snow, searching the forest carefully. We shouldn't have waited until the last minute to get ready for the holiday, said the father in the family. He was holding an axe over his shoulder. We'll never find a good one. You shouldn't give up hope, said the mother, and she pointed at the pine tree. Look. It's perfect, said the daughter. Beautiful, agreed the son. And its skin looks so crispy, said the father, and he reached down and he scooped up the Latke from the snow. We'll need to reheat it, of course, but this will be perfect for Hanukkah dinner, topped with applesauce, or sour cream, or even jam. I'll refry it in oil, said the mother, to remind us of the rededication of the temple and the triumph of the Maccabees over Antiochus, said the daughter. After hiding in the caves for all that time, the son chimed in. The father smiled down at the potato, at the Latke in his mitten, and then he stared curiously at his other hand. What was I thinking, bringing this axe along? He said to himself. Well, the family strolled back to the village, walking past all the houses with the flashing colored lights and nodding politely at the candy cane. They reached their own home. The family carried the Latke into the house, which was warm and cozy, and they sat down at the table, which was lit with the flickering candles of the menorah, which is a branched candelabra that's specifically designed for the holiday. It is very frustrating not to be understood in this world. If you say one thing and are told that you mean another, it can make you want to scream. But somewhere in the world there is a place for all of us. Whether you're an electric form of decoration, a peppermint-scented sweet, a source of timber, or a potato pancake. On a cold and snowy night, everyone and everything should be welcome somewhere. And the Latke was welcomed into a home full of people who understood what a Latke is and how it fits in its particular holiday. And then they ate it. Okay, that is the end of our story. I hope you love it. I'll see you later.